Welcome, Speech Guys listeners, to the official start of Season 2 of the Speech Guys. We're going to kick off the new season with a new quad of speeches before you die. So we've heard a lot of speeches given from the middle and primes of people's lives, so we decided to see what we can learn from speeches given at the end of people's lives. We're going to start this quad of speeches with a speech by Jimmy Valvano. Jimmy Valvano was a college basketball coach, pretty well known for rushing the court dramatically after a last-second victory in the NCAA national championship game when he was coaching for North Carolina State. And the speech we're going to go over tonight is his speech given at the 1993 ESPY Awards, just a few months before he passed away. So we hope you guys enjoy and take away as much from the speech as we did.
When you see the road from every direction, it will give you eyes, give you hope, it'll give you perspective. I've been back and forth, and yeah, I had my crashes. Now I've seen the road, it goes everywhere.
We're going.
I think we're going.
We're going.
Okay, super excited. Wonderful.
Yeah, you sound a little bad.
So, Mike,
Oh, look at that hat.
The speech guys must go on.
probably would have killed the average man.
No whiskey tonight unless I get inspired. Right now I have hot water and lemon juice.
I thought whiskey killed it.
Yeah, that might be true. See, that's one of the bits that might get me going on the whiskey. Like, by the end, I might be like, COVID, it's a myth. Fake news. Yeah. Do you know where you got it from, Matt?
I don't. And so Claire was sick before I was, but she just had a very short, 12-hour type of thing. She had she didn't take her temperature, but she just felt like chills, feverish. This was last week, Saturday going into Sunday. And then Abe had a fever and was sick for a couple days. And then I got it. So I just, basically I must have gotten it from them, but I have no idea where they would have gotten it from because, Claire's hasn't really been out and about a ton, just taking care of Abe.
When did you test? Yesterday or this morning?
I tested this morning. I got a PCR swab yesterday, but I did the
And
home
you
test.
felt sick. That's what prompted you to take it. Yeah. I was at a conference with several hundred people this week and kind of wore a mask and avoided most outside of my team. And that was Tuesday, and I still am doing great. So I think I might have got in and out of there without getting it. We'll see.
Good. And Ross is teeming with artificial and natural antibodies.
With the amount of shots they put in me and the COVID that I've had,
So many antibodies.
I kill COVID when it comes into my body.
So what we got going on tonight, Ross? What's our vision here? Ross has recorded the intro.
That was really hard.
So-
Mike was just 10, maybe 15 seconds, but tell him we're
Yeah.
starting season 2 and introduce the new quad of speeches and just give a short blurb on who the person is in the speech they gave. I got a lot packed in 50 seconds. 50 seconds.
You would have saved time if you didn't say the word speech about 50 times. So another addition to this new season is I want to try using the actual speech excerpt in the podcast as much as possible. So I have the audio pulled off ready today. Obviously, how I imagine it, just get something similar is, we'll listen sort of on our own on YouTube, whatever excerpt we're going to focus on first, because Ross has 2 of them. So we'll just end up replacing that audio with the actual excerpt. When we don't have, there's a speech from 1900, I think we should try finding people with acting experience in our circle of friends to read the excerpt for the speech.
So Bobby.
Whoa.
Bobby.
Dang.
What?
Is he the only one?
Bobby? Oh,
As
yeah,
far as
yeah.
I know.
Bobby McNeely would be great. And you're like getting at least one other person to
Right.
listen to
This
the
is the
episode, too.
reason. This is the reason. Like we need artists and creativity, and this is probably why we should all move to Austin and just join the city that is the podcasting capital of the world, so that we can feed off of that.
Is Austin really the
Yeah.
podcast capital?
100%.
What makes it
Yeah,
like
Rogan moved
is
from
Rogan
LA
like
to Austin. Tim Ferriss moved from San Francisco to Austin.
Pretty
It's like
soon
if
they'll
you're
be
an
like, Matt,
if you're an independent creator
Period.
who's like more on the intellectual side, you're in Austin and not LA or somewhere else.
Interesting. And Rogan, he didn't even podcast when he had COVIDs. And
Yeah,
we've got
we've
2
gotta get
COVID
that in there.
podcasters right now. So really, why aren't we in Austin?
Okay.
Or does that make Peoria, Springfield, wherever you're from, Mike, Chicago the podcast capital? I think it makes Illinois the podcast capital.
Wherever you're from,
Illinois
like,
Broadway.
So what if we go ahead and open up on YouTube Jimmy V's speech and we listen to that first excerpt to get us on the same page, and then sort of
by we, are
sound
you
on
going to
us?
open it and we all hear it, or am I supposed to go to YouTube?
Well, no, you won't be able to hear it. So you guys just open it, and we'll listen to that first bit.
Okay, you guys ready?
Now, when I'm fighting cancer, everybody knows that. And people ask me all the time about how you go through your life and how's your day. And nothing has changed for me. As Dick said, I'm a very emotional, passionate man. I can't help it. That's being the son of Rocco and Angelina Valvano. That just comes with the territory, right? We hug, we kiss, we love. And when people say to me, how do you get through life or each day, it's the same thing. To me, there are 3 things we all should do every day. If we do this every day of our life, you're going to have, what a wonderful, number 1 is laugh. You should laugh every day. Number 2 is think. You should spend some time in thought. And number 3 is you should have your emotions moved to tears. Could be happiness or joy. But think about it. If you laugh, you think, and you cry, that's a full day. That's a heck of a day. You do that 7 days a week, you're going to have something special.
So I feel like when the first time I listened to the speech, the 3 things are definitely that was the first thing I think that was like, oh, like if you had to take one thing away from it, the first time I heard it, like those 3 things stuck with me. Like even when I picked this speech for tonight, before I went and re-listened to it, like I knew he was like, that's the thing I remembered the best. You gotta laugh, you gotta cry, you gotta think.
Absolutely.
So I think that's part of why I think that just what that stuck out to me is and I don't know, I just the cry part I think is maybe the unique one. And I know you guys had kind of said some things about it. But I think laugh and think are a little bit easier to accomplish. I don't know. Do you guys cry daily?
I do not cry daily.
The amount of thinking I do compensates for the lack of presence of the other 2.
You just overthink every day. And
Am I crying enough? Am I laughing enough?
Yeah, I think you're focused on like crying. It's like, oh, wow, who really cries every day? But then like the first 2 are sneaky. There's probably a lot of days I don't like genuinely laugh. And even, I mean, there's even some days you could go through your routine and not like, when I think of think, I probably think more of like reflection or grappling or prayer or, like deeply thinking. And, there's days that probably doesn't happen either.
I feel like the thinking one is interesting because like most people, I mean, everybody thinks
Right.
about something, but like, I don't know. And maybe I'm trying to look too deeply into his point here, but like So, I mean, I think a lot at work every day. I'm a physical therapist. You have to think about, what you're going to do with this coming patient. If you have an evaluation, like what are appropriate goals for them? Like you have to use your brain and think. It has to. I mean, you have to use it. But like, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I do it every day, so it becomes it becomes kind of
Right.
monotonous. But I feel like when I hear it, at least in the context of the speech, and maybe because it has that like kind of romantic flavor, just because like the way he gives it, he's so passionate. Like I don't know. To me, it seems like I would put more. When I hear that, I think more like, have I read a book? Have I thought reflectively about something? I could be doing better in my own life. Like, um, more the I don't know. In my head, I hear it more as like the artistic side than like the scientific nuts and bolts side of thinking.
Right, because the first point is laugh, the third is cry. Like he's talking about emotion. So I believe his perspective of thinking is like a type of thoughtfulness that is not in the regular course of the day and is more of an emotive thinking that is off track from you just going through your day. That like thinking that like stirs emotion or analyzes something about yourself or kind of outside of work or
I think as I sort of indicate the notes, I was just sort of skeptical, like really crying every single day. I mean, that's just crazy. As we sort of talk through this, I think like what like sticks out to me the most is that almost as if like these three things, laughing, thinking, crying, they're almost more of like a proxy for the sort of demeanor that Jimmy V seemed to have with respect to his impending death.
yeah.
Pretty quick impending death since he passed
Yeah.
away just like 2 months after this, I think, right? Right. And you get a little bit of it through the rest of the speech. He's an Italian and living life vigorously is sort of his shtick, his thing. And the fact that he sort of, this speech and this segment of the speech is almost like
Right.
an anthem to that and affirmations to that. It's like, this big public figure is dying, and the way that he's able to affirm that is almost more for other people. Because if they see Jimmy V like all sad and distraught over his own death, it's like, well, gosh, now I'm going to be scared to die more so. But so I think there might be, so I mean, it's certainly partly genuine on his part, but I think partly, yeah, sort of giving an anthem to others that, yes, despite the reality of death, this is how you
Yeah.
ought to continue to live. So, kind of a mythical truth, as Jordan Peterson would say.
Yeah, and I like the mythical truth thing. That I think fit because, like, yeah, I don't think he literally cried every day, right? I don't. Yeah, and I don't think that's what he was even trying to say. But I guess maybe like a more general way, like, do you engage with your emotions in like a substantial way? And that's something that, like, yeah, doesn't happen very often with anyone, and that much, like, I think is more realistic. Like, I don't know if you literally need, because I don't know, to some degree, to like work yourself up to the point of tears, like, seems a little bit inauthentic, but at the same time, like, I don't know, bad things happen. There are still bad things in the world. Like, I don't know. I guess I'm curious, like, what types of things would literally make you cry, and what type, or is it just like,
I
to
think
let yourself
I think
be affected?
I think he did literally cry every day.
To kind of wrestle with that.
In the context of the paragraph before, so I'll take Mike's point to disagree with your point, Matt. He's like, I can't help it. Now I'm fighting cancer. Everyone knows that. People ask me all the time, how do you go through life as I'm fighting cancer? It's like, I'm the son of these two Italian people. We're very passionate, emotive. It comes with the territory. So when people say to me, how do you get through life each day? So it's like you know you're going to die. That's the context of the question. So how do you get through life each day? And so, yeah, pre him knowing he was going to die, maybe not. Maybe he didn't cry every day. But now that he does know he's going to die, the essence of him, like, what would you tell or do or say, or what would you live out knowing that you're going to die? And for him, it was like, he's very emotional. That gives him life and, you know, probably emotional with other people, or that's how he connects with people. And so every interaction with them, like just cut to the chase. You know, we can laugh, we can live large, we can think, and part of it is crying for him. And I think that's true.
I think we should maybe on the topic of crying still, of course. Did you guys see I looked up how often the average American man cries? Where'd it go?
I didn't see it. How was this data gathered? Is this
As with
self-report
all
or,
studies of social science, it's
because that's going to
probably
bias your results,
unreplicable.
I imagine.
Where did it go?
You're like being the opposite of cry right now, Matt. Like, shut up with your data statistics. This is
Sorry.
how many
I'm
people
thinking,
cry.
all right?
Just believe him.
I'm thinking. You guys don't let me think I'm going to cry, all right?
Was it twice per month?
Oh, here we go. According to a Harvard study, men cry 2 times per month.
Harvard
on
hat.
average.
Is that good enough for you? 2 times per month. I would have guessed less than that.
I mean, yeah, I would.
Who did they sample with this? I'm just curious.
I did not.
What do they have like an operational definite, like, do you like get teary-eyed? Does that count? Because like, I don't know, I've gotten teary-eyed. Like, I don't know.
Okay, so then the next question, when is the last time you guys cried? Here's the Ross's Don't Podcast Scared.
All right. Well, I'll go first since I was just being too much of a thinker and not a crier. So when I wrote down my answers, when did I cry? Okay, so I wrote down my answers, but since I wrote this down, I actually cried this afternoon. I was just thinking, so I was taking a nap, right? So I was sick. I'm sick today. I have COVID. I'm podcasting with COVID. No big deal. I'm just a hero. It's not a big deal. But so I was taking a nap, and I normally when I'm sleeping, the lights are off. It's dark, but more light today. I'm sleeping in the middle of the day, and I see this picture of Claire and I on our wedding day, and just, I don't know, like the speech talking about death and or just thinking about some of that stuff I was doing earlier in the day. It made me think like, crap, like what would I actually do if like Claire were to die or if Abe were to die? And like, yeah, like it did bring me to tears. Just like considering like what my world would look like, what my life would be like. It would, it would be irreparably different. And like not even a little bit, like just unbelievably different. So I suppose it was today. But as I wrote that, it was before that. The last time I remember crying was Abe's birth. Yeah. Before that, it was either watching the movie Up with Claire, or at my grandpa's funeral. I suppose those are the other ones. So
solid answers. I got mine. One's pretty light. Probably during a recent episode of This Is Us, starring to watch.
All right, so hold on. So like Up, This Is Us. Can you and I have a movie one too. Like what type of scene or what puts you over the edge or what message is being sent? It's like, oh, there they go. The tear ducts are flowing.
That's a good question. Yeah, definitely like love, romance type stuff. And that's actually more so like the past probably 6 or 7 years, that particular thing. Whereas in the past it was more like death, like seeing some beloved character die on screen, which that's still the case. I mean, hey, I cried like when Iron Man died, like every other good American. But well, anyway, throw on just to clarify that. But but yeah, the romance thing. There's actually a scene. I was telling a friend this recently. Yeah, a couple of years ago. There's a scene from the new Little Women film. Oh gosh, that is such
Little
a
Women,
great
is
film.
that Reese?
But there's a scene where
Yeah.
Reese Witherspoon. No, she's not in either version. I don't think. But there's a scene where like the guy is expressing his feelings towards this particular, well, towards the main character girl, and there's well, I won't say it out of because just in case this person who's listening, they figure out it was them. But anyway, there's just something really striking about that scene that was very familiar. So yeah, love romance things I cry in films. On a more serious point, this sounds depressing though. On the more like actual real life crying, it was a few months ago, and it was at the like sudden realization of breaking up with this particular girl several years ago. And what was really striking was that I did not shed a tear when we broke up until very recently. So going into all the details is the topic for another show, but that's enough to like sort of satisfy the requirement there.
That's a story for the double gold members, for the
Just
campfire conversations.
Send the check straight
after.
to the email. We'll take them from there. I would say my last time crying, if we're just talking like mild tearing up, which I don't know if I would answer that as crying or not. Maybe, I guess technically. But I feel like sometimes when I hear like certain music or songs, I don't know why, it makes me kind of think of like like pick a scene from a movie where somebody like self-sacrificially dies. I know. I'm sure. Yeah, I was thinking Bruce Willis in Armageddon, actually.
Oh yeah,
But,
yeah, I definitely
yeah,
tried
yeah.
in that back in the
But
day.
like anytime I like for some reason certain like music makes me like just bring back those like memories in my head. And sometimes I'll just think about them, or sometimes I'll like picture myself in that spot, and like that just kind of brings me to tears a little bit. So I don't know if that's good or bad. But and then I guess one that kind of like more of a reflective crying then, like, and this has been years ago at this point. Not that I haven't cried since then, but like one that popped into my head, so I wanted to share it. Was I remember when Thomas, who's my oldest son for the listeners, I don't want to give him too much information. That might be my oldest son, listeners. When he turned 1, I was rocking him in a chair, and I just like thought through his sleep, and I just like thought through that year and like the different things we went through that year, and that like literally moved me to tears. Because I feel like sometimes I don't cry in the quote unquote stereotypical like cry moments, like when your kid is born or something. But I like very distinctly remember that like it was our first house, just rocking in the rocking chair with him, sleeping, and just kind of thinking about that first year. And I mean, like that legit made me cry. Yeah.
I think tear up, I'd probably be on the once or twice a month. Ideally in like reflective moments, I think most similar to what Matt described, just like, I don't know, whether it's a speech or something you wrote or a song that comes on, like you just feel, I don't know, perhaps connected with the spirit or close to God, or just like thankful and grateful, and I would say like slightly moved to tears. My movie, if there was like I usually watch It's a Wonderful Life a couple weeks before Christmas, and that's probably my cry movie. Just being George Bailey being caught up in everything and just getting to the
Do you cry at the very end, like when they all come in and they sing together, and Sam like wires him way more money than they actually needed.
I think
They needed $8,000, and after like everybody brings in and puts in like $4 each, like Sam just wired $25,000.
yeah, I think that part's like every other time maybe. Sometimes it's just like, oh, like the movie's over, it's good. I think also when he's at the bar at Martini's the first time, he does like a really good acting job where it's just like he's starting to pray and like I'm at the end of my rope and like I need help, and I think I don't know if it was acted really well or just yeah, it's a good movie. Very well acted by Mr. Stewart.
Are there any Jimmy Stewart impressions you can do for
I want a really big one. How about the moon, Mary? I'll
Pretty
answer
sure
the
Jimmy
moon.
Stewart. That's good. I'm pretty sure he actually like had PT. Like I've heard, maybe somebody told me this or I read this, that he had PTSD from the war, and he like channeled that for the like when he broke down there towards.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily he channeled it. I think it was shot pretty close after he got back, and he signed up for the war and just he was pretty famous already and was just like, nope, like send me to the front lines. He was a pilot and went on quite a few raid bombing missions. Lost friends, got back, might have I don't know how long it was filmed after, but yeah, just still he was pretty like emotionally raw, and just the way the script was written, quite a bit of his processing just like came out, and a lot of that anger that was legit. It was more him than his acting abilities.
Crying, we're still on crying before we move away from it. I remember crying a couple months ago. We watched the movie Fatima, which is about the like Our Lady of Fatima, like Mary's apparitions in Portugal, like 100 years ago ish. And I don't know why, honestly, but like I remember that movie. That movie made me cry actually, but don't have like a good reason why. But I don't know. I feel okay. So cry daily, often. Some let yourself be moved to tears. What about somebody posted something I was kind of thought it'd be interesting, like laughter. Somebody posted some on the outline some like a link to something about the psychological, just the benefits of laughter. I didn't read that, so I didn't really know what that included.
Yeah, the link I posted was more of a general summary of various psychological benefits, which yeah, I think to some degrees are fairly obvious. There's one study, I couldn't find it today, but I remember hearing it on I don't know if it was an NPR thing or some other podcast, but it was basically a study on whether or not forced laughter, like even if laughter was forced, not like in response to like an authentic stimulus, but even forced laughter, like just like like making yourself laugh, like actually did produce some
I think
sort
it
of
works.
like general health benefit. But yeah, I mean, it's just I guess I don't know, it's like a placebo effect of some sort, or like caffeine. All you have to do is think you're being caffeinated, and you'll feel the effects.
I actually did it last week. When I saw that in the notes, I was like, I kind of tripped and accidentally experimented with it. My wife and I don't remember what the disagreement was, but we were kind of just talking through something that had some tension to it. And, some decision had to be made, and we were just on different sides and working through it. And something silly happened, and I like let out just a little chuckle. It wasn't that funny at all, but I just decided to like pour more laughter into it and just let myself think it was funnier, and audibly like laughed louder than it deserved. And she was like, "Why are you laughing at that?" And I was like, "I don't know, just because like just to bring some lightness to the situation and helped a ton. Might try to do it more often.
And I feel like
Back to crying.
crying element. But I feel like the fact that he has both of these things, I think the fact that he talks about both these things in tandem, and just kind of thinking of what I envision as like the very like emotional or not, I guess emotional or passionate Italian type, which he seems to kind of be referencing, right? He talks about Rocco and Angelina as parents. But it's like, if you laugh and you cry, like you're not taking anything too seriously. You know what I mean? If you're able to do both of those things in a day, like it shows that you've got the sort of like emotional flexibility, and you're not like letting whatever made you cry, it's not ruining your day, and whatever made you laugh, it's not like you're drunk with laughter and you can't be serious when you need to be, and it's this kind of, I don't know, like I remember there was something in like Everyone Loves Raymond, which
I know the episode you're about to describe, the bunny.
I don't recall the specifics of a bunny or anything, but it was basically there's some fight between, the Barone family and I believe Amy, who's kind of a girlfriend of one of peripheral characters. They're this like very quiet, kind of passive family. And they're like, why, like, how do you guys love each other if you guys are arguing so much? And basically like they kind of was like, well, and then they all just kind of turned against him and they all joined together like in a second, like, so there's this kind of like, there's this like anger, that was very obviously expressed. And then there was this like camaraderie that like immediately clicked into high gear, just with but like, I guess I don't know, one of the lines one of the characters had was like, we just say all the things we feel and we feel better afterwards, or something to that effect. I don't know. But either way, like it's the kind of thing that, I don't know. I think it is a healthy thing just to, like if you let things fly, not obviously don't be a jerk about it, but like he seems like that kind of guy, like you let things fly and you just say what you think to some degree. You have to have a filter of some sort, but just either way, just don't take yourself too seriously, I guess, seems to be kind of the central thing, because that's where you really hurt people, and that's where you really kind of get a bad kind of personal perspective,
I think to kind of like not summarize them, but like connect the three things too. Laugh, think, and cry. They're just very like basic human things. So like, I don't know, like I like, and somebody put in the notes, like just crying and how we don't really like to do that in today's society, but yet like, from like the Judeo-Christian's perspective, right? In the Bible, like King David weeps, Jesus weeps, and then somebody else put like the ancient Greeks, like multiple of was it Odysseus? Yeah, like multiple like
Odysseus
Greek heroes
and Achilles,
like wept,
yeah.
and like that wasn't like a negative thing on them whatsoever. So I don't know, like to kind of bring all those three things together, like you have to really live like real life to do those things. So like I laugh more on our camping trips than I do watching a TV show. But I probably laugh watching a TV show more than I'm looking at my cell phone. And like I don't know, like when I don't know, so I don't know if there's anything to that, but like just in like you have to really live life to experience or to live those three things. Maybe you could, I guess we could argue that maybe against some of those things, but we just kind of seem a lot today to distract ourselves from life, whether that's watching Netflix or looking at our cell phones or I don't know if there's anything there or not, but I just kind of feel like there's this tendency to kind of like escape from life and distract ourselves from life as opposed to like embrace life. And I think the embrace life might more commonly lead to, the three things that Jimmy B says we should do.
I think there might be some relationship here with another component of the speech that, I don't know, might be worthwhile to visit. So he tells that story of the Vince Lombardi sort of guidelines for excellence, right? So he's this excited head basketball coach at Rutgers, only 21 years old, which is crazy.
Freshman coach at Rutgers at the time, not head
Okay.
coach, but still impressive.
Well, head coach at the freshman. And, it's like I can sort of imagine myself doing it, right? So he has Vince Lombardi as his inspiration. He reads this book about Vince Lombardi, or by Vince Lombardi, about how to present a great speech to your athletes. And, this one collection of words sticks with Jimmy. And it's this line from Vince Lombardi, which is, there are 3 things which are going to make us successful this year, guys. You're going to focus on family, religion, and the Green Bay Packers, right? And that gets Jimmy all excited. He's like, that's perfect. I'm just going to switch out Green Bay Packers with Rutgers basketball. And of course, the whole thing sort of falls through because he gets stuck not being able to get into the locker room. And then he accidentally says Green Bay Packers instead of Rutgers basketball.
That was great. I laughed and I
think there is like a relationship between that story, just sort of like break us loose a little bit on the laugh, think, and cry thing. There is a relationship in that story to what he just talked about, right? Because within that story, you do sort of have all 3 of those elements, right? You laugh at the one part because, he can't get into the locker room and it's just not going the way that he wants. There's a thought because, he's like, I'm going to present the most inspirational speech possible. He picks this thing as the one. And then there's crying in the sense of like, what is the most appropriate way to navigate the tragedy, quote unquote, of the scene, right? So he took it in stride and he sort of like laughed at it in a sense, or like licking those emotions. So I don't know. There's something about that story that I really like, of him showing this really broad spectrum of himself to a crowd where, people obviously knew he was a great basketball coach, but they didn't necessarily know, or at the very least for us, for sure, didn't know what kind of person he was, right? Like that story just says a lot about a person.
He seemed very, kind of like you said, that story, I think, told a lot about him. He was just so genuine in how he spoke, too. And I think that's part of why the speech was just really powerful. I don't know. I know, like, for myself, sometimes I struggle with, especially, I guess, maybe in more like the work type settings, but you always kind of have in the back of your mind, like, what the other person's going to think of you, or how they're going to take this situation, or what they're going to think about it afterwards, as opposed to just, kind of being genuinely yourself. And I think that he was able to do that. It seems like he did, I guess, completely.
I think that was the best part. I went and replayed that part again. It was a little of his origin story. He was giving this big speech at the ESPYs, and it just brought him back to like his first big speech ever. And he's a basketball coach, right? So about any high school, college coach, like the locker room talk, the motivational speech, like, what are we going to get through? You'd probably do it 20, 50, 100 times a season. You kind of have to start in practice with like a little bit of a speech. And he's given thousands and thousands of these, like 1 minute, 2 minute, I need to convey a little bit of a message here. And he was trying to do that on stage at the ESPYs as he was dying. And it just harkened him back to age 21 when he completely botched it and messed up and probably didn't convey anything. And all he had to do was remember 3 things. Like, all he had to do was remember, what were they? Yeah, family, love your religion, Green Bay Packers. And he had to switch Green Bay to Rutgers, and he forgot. And he probably was like, even before getting on stage here, it's like, I just want to convey a message, like, laugh every day, think every day, cry every day. And over the arc of his career, he was able to remember that and fill it in with a lot of other good stuff. But I don't know. It's funny how, I don't know, how kind of the essence of like the sports locker room coach is speech oriented, and a lot of people reflect on, moments in their life where they were a part of that sitting on the bench, or we're so wrapped up in it, like we want to be the guy to give the speech, which is basically the only reason we do this podcast, right? We're enthralled with it too.
It's sort of a digression here, but it's relevant too, though. Yeah, sort of like what you're getting at, Landon, like the philosophy of the speech and how it does have like this religious quality to it, right? It's like where without the speech, like in cross country in high school, 'cause I was the team captain,
Mm-hmm.
and I was sort of the speech giver. Before every cross country meet, I had like this little book called the Cold War Runner, which is behind me still, and I'd flip through it prior to the meet, and I'd find the quote I was going to use, and I'd give a little talk to the team, and then I'd sort of close it with just whatever the quote that I was going to use for that meet was, right? And I remember maybe like the first couple times doing that or something, like feeling a little bit awkward because it's almost as if that speech, the act of giving a speech in that
Yeah.
moment or a sports moment for that matter, is sort of like an act of faith because you can all go to the starting line or the center of the court, and it's like you all generally agree what you're going to do. We're going to play basketball this way, or we're going to run. But at the same time, it's like you can have people on the court who are sort of like just going along with it. But when you make that quote act of faith, if you will, that this is what our competition is going to mean, that's why the sports speech is so powerful. It's because it is this act of faith that's not
That's fair.
dressed in the usual cloak of religion. And at the end of one's life, so to tie it back into this quad, at the end of one's life, as in the case with Jimmy V here, it is the ultimate act of faith in saying that this is what my life meant. And for everyone else, because reality is everyone has a speech before you die, right? No matter who you are. And it may like seem really intuitive to us, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna give a good speech before I die. I'm not just gonna say something inane like other people. But I wonder, even at that point, when you give that last speech, whether it requires just as much courage and just as much faith to say something meaningful
Yeah.
and sincere as any other moment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would think it would. I mean, obviously it depends on a lot of things, but I think this kind of transitions well into something else we were going to talk about. But I posted a link, and we'll have it in the show notes. But our friends over at the Art of Manliness, they had a podcast a couple years ago.
Close personal friends.
Their podcast was The Dying Experience: Myths and Answers. So, nice little supplement to our episode here for anyone who's interested. But I think Brett interviewed a hospice nurse. I think it was. Sorry, it's been a while since I've listened to it. But just talking about death, and the reason I say this is because kind of the idea of like the speech and the guest on the show, kind of. I mean, she'd been around death a lot. But she kind of posed it as we're used to seeing death in movies. As the person's laying there, they know that they have a minute left. They say something very memorable, and their eyes kind of close or whatever. Like they kind of have that opportunity. But she kind of, I guess in her opinion, it was kind of the opposite. She was kind of like, typically death's not like that. It's a several day process. The body slowly shuts down. You're not really consciously aware towards the end of what's going on. So most of the time, and not to say that there's not people that have had, the chance, but a more typical death is not here, I have a chance to get my last words because I know my time is near, if that makes sense. I I guess you might kind of know towards the end of your life and your older age that you don't have a ton of time left. But and I just kind of thought that was interesting that, and her experience is very different than the kind of the movie experience, if you will. So we do all have our last speech, and we all have our last opportunity to really talk to somebody deeply, but it's not necessarily right there at the time of death, if that makes sense. So for anybody that doesn't know too, so Jimmy Valvano, for the listeners, he's 2 months away from his death here, I think, give or take. And a lot of people, apparently he didn't lose his hair with chemotherapy, and just that, and in combination with his just kind of boisterous personality, a lot of people didn't know how sick he was when he gave this speech. But I listened to an interview with Dick Vitale, who's another big college basketball personality, and he was the one up on stage. She's standing like 20 feet off to the side of Jimmy V during the speech, and he had helped him up, I think, onto the stage. And he said they were good friends, and he was just he was shocked that he thought it was going to be like a 10-second thanks, because Jimmy V was just so weak and sick that he wouldn't be able to stand up there and give it. So it's pretty impressive that he was able to. What was it, like 12 minutes? I think the speech was. But
could I go back to sports speeches? Mike, you wrote in the notes like sports, mostly just cross country for you. But your talk of being the speech giver in cross country, I just connected a bunch of dots. So I'd be curious if you guys have an experience like this. If you have a good sports speech you were a part of or you heard that didn't end with a botched Green Bay Packers reference. 2002, I was first year cross country. We made it to state. Not a huge deal. We were pretty good though, and we thought we could win state as a team. Middle school. This is middle school. And our coach was the janitor at the middle school. No one else wanted to coach cross country. And it actually should be a Disney film. If I would write one book first, I would write this book because, he was a janitor. And took over cross country. Ended up doing track and girls volleyball. Went to state. He has the most trophies in our high school. Most state medalists. I'll go off on a tangent. His name was also Jimmy. And so this was his second year. He got 5th in state, and we were probably gonna win state. And this is 2002, so we didn't have social media. No one read any motivational books when you're in middle school. And we get to the starting line, and it's cold out, and he had kind of prepared a speech, and he just tied it into the school a little bit. He's like, guys, it's cold out, it's November, whatever. He's like, there's going to be a little extra pain out there today, but the pain you feel, that's going to be temporary. The pride that you can get today is going to be forever. Pain is temporary, pride is forever. That was the first time I'd ever heard that quote. And he gave it to us in a heavy manner. I was like, oh my gosh, this could be great. And it's probably the best. If you would ask me, what's the best sports speech you heard in high school, middle school? I remember that. And we tied first state champs that day, and we got second. Because of me, I went to the 6th runner, whatever. So I lost this state championship. But pretty I'd be curious, there's something, I don't know, naive about the fact that was kind of a generic quote. He had discovered it and was well read for that time. I don't know if we've lost anything since so much motivational stuff is cynically oh yeah, cool quote. And how would you strike at the heart again in those situations now that we've lost that? And then just to kind of summarize, that's my best sports speech. the next year he got like pretty much the whole school to go out for cross country. Like, no offense, but like we had like 20, 30, 40 like pretty overweight kids like just trying out there to go 2 miles because like the janitor took the cross country team to like state. Pretty infamous dude, won a lot of trophies, and he died of COVID last year, actually, in his 50s. So, yeah,
my God, geez.
but yeah, it seems to tie well into the evening that we have.
I'd watch that movie for
Dang,
sure.
that's a really cool story.
Yeah. I have a folder on my computer that's just called The Book, and it's got an outline for like him and kind of how all that fits together. But
Landon would be the cocky white jock, comes from a family of money, and he's like he gets dirt on his white shoes the first day and doesn't want to come back.
pretty much that essence is in there. Yeah.
Dang. That is a really cool story.
Thanks. Ross, what was your best speech? You were a high school football all-star, if our audience doesn't know. More cover shots of the SJR sports section than anybody I know. Were you ever speeched upon by a coach that you recall to this day?
Speeched upon by a coach. Man, I honestly, I can't think of one like single, like, oh wow, that was it, if that makes sense. I mean, obviously played a lot of sports, so I feel like heard a lot of the pregame and halftime talks, but I can't recall like a single like, oh, that was it. You know what I mean? I've got like, I don't know, I feel like I've got like the more like clips or like it was more like phrases that stuck with me, if that makes sense. It was never like that speech did it for me, at least from a coach. Not to say that they weren't good speech givers, but I don't have one.
I don't know if it was the speech or just the scenario, but I might have even referenced this in one of the way early episodes. In fact, I don't even know if it's officially been kept in recording, so maybe our listeners will have to go through all of our episodes and listen to see if this story came up. But in high school, there is a coach who I didn't get to know real well. He was one of the varsity coaches when I was freshman, sophomore. Junior year, or basically my sophomore year, he leaves because he has cancer. And he just wasn't able to continue coaching and whatever. So junior year, this is the day before our homecoming game against the best team on our schedule that year, and conference rivals. And we find out that he really wasn't doing very well, and it was like he was starting to take a turn. And literally basically 2 hours or so before the game, we found out that he had died. And I don't remember specific words that were said, but whatever. But yeah, just like the whole process, just the way our team kind of like bonded together, because the seniors knew him a lot better than the juniors did. But we all knew who he was. He did some of the strength and conditioning stuff in the summer. Just like the way we all bonded together, and like this whatever speech, I don't remember a single word from it, to be honest, but like I just remember that speech that was given to us like shortly before the game. And we freaking pounded the crap out of him. Which was, it was just like a really cool way to honor Coach Schlegel. So a speech in my life.
Now that we're talking about it more, I remember I was always into, like, I think somebody mentioned quotes. Mike, you mentioned you like quotes. I was also really into quotes. So I actually I did it, like I had it on during every game in high school. I wore an armband with, so like a lot of, you'll see like and you don't really see it anymore, but you used to see like they'd raise their arm up and they'd kind of pull that thing up and they had that forearm thing with like all the plays and stuff on it, in a football game. Um, I had one of those and it had like I just had written down like it was like 20 quotes that I'd found inspirational. And then I don't know if I'd call this a quote or a quip, but so my dad, I remember before my first ever football game. So I'm like 4th grade. I don't know why he told me this because it seems a little bit like heavy, but he told me very specifically. I remember it. He said, if you get lucky enough to score a touchdown, act like you've been there before. Which I don't know, like maybe he thought I was going to just be obnoxious. Like I don't know why he wanted to tell me that. Now that I think about it, but um, I was just really proud of that always because then I actually did score a touchdown. But I got quoted so that's like 4th grade, and then my senior year of high school, I got quoted in the paper, and I brought that up. So I just kind of thought that was a kind of a fun, like, I mean, that's the end of my football career, right? So like, not that long, I guess, but anyway.
We'll be thinking about that one a lot. That's good. Good imagery.
All right, so one other thing I kind of wanted to bring up tonight that I thought was kind of cool. So Jimmy V, I mean, there's all kinds. If anybody is like, I feel like listeners should listen to this speech because we are not going to do it justice in any sense of the word, and it only takes like 12 minutes. But I think just the fact that he was so close to death. I referenced it earlier, but that Art of Manliness podcast, and I don't know if you guys want to get too personal or not as far as like being around death, but something else that the whoever that person was that was on the podcast with Brett McKay that for that episode brought up was that we're very uncomfortable with death. So I shared it in the pre-show, but I think they brought up the point that, for most of world history, if somebody's going to pass away, they're like, if grandpa's going to pass away, like he's upstairs in your house and you have to take care of him right up until the very end. And then you have to take care of the body. And like, that was just a very normal, like death was a very normal, someone else's death, I guess, but like death was a very normal part of life in a way. And yet today it's become very distant. So a more typical, someone's at the hospital, maybe at a nursing home. Not that, I mean, accidents obviously happen and some people die at home. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but most people, I guess, aren't directly around somebody at the final hours of life or right after they pass away. So it's almost something we're kind of unfamiliar with or maybe a little bit afraid of. So I didn't know if you guys had any experiences of that or just, I mean, you don't have to share, but if anybody, was around somebody that was, near the end, just kind of, yeah, if that moved you at all, I guess, or if there's anything there.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier regarding visitations or wakes, I think there's something on point there. Yeah, a few years ago, yeah, I mean, I don't think this is bad to say. So, gosh, now I feel bad. I don't remember who it was exactly. Some sort of family friend of Jabot's cross country team. There was a wake or a visitation, and at the funeral home, and it happened that a lot of people knew them, and so we stopped at the funeral home on the way back from the cross country meet. It was a small team. There was only like 8 people or so, but we went in, and there were 2 of us coaches there, and like I was telling you guys earlier in the podcast, and obviously I didn't know this person super well, so I can't remember who it was, but I did intentionally go up to the casket, where the kneeler is at. I don't know if that's just a Catholic visitation thing. Landon, are there kneelers at Protestant funeral?
We have open caskets. No one ever kneels in front of them, though.
Yeah.
They just kind of go by and stand and be somber.
Anyway, I went up to this person's casket, and and prayed at the actual kneeler for not maybe 30 seconds or a minute, said a few Hail Marys or something. And I always do that. And I thought and the other coach did not do that. And I thought it was really important to exactly like what you're getting at, Ross, to demonstrate that sense of what's the right word for it? Bravery is not the right word, but that sense of comfortability is not the right word either. You guys get what word I'm looking for? That something towards death.
The simple word might be respect.
Not even that either. Maybe it's a combination of all those words. Acceptance of death. Because like I say, I feel like that's just a small thing to do that does matter. That to not act as if you're going to like catch death from that person or something. I think a lot of times in that wake space, the visitation space, there is, I think, a certain respect. There is something that can get lost sometimes where like people start to get too comfortable there and they just start talking about whatever crap going on
At the wake?
at the wake, yeah. And there's a certain conscientiousness towards the person who's passed that sort of called for throughout the entire scope of that experience.
Yeah. I'll go off that. I wouldn't call my story the deepest. I've had a couple grandparents die, but I wasn't their bedside a ton. Growing up in a pretty small town, we went to a lot of visitations. I went from I don't know why, but I went to like our whole family kind of just went to any visitation. If a church member died or somebody, just I don't know if it was hundreds, but and I think I have a couple uncles who live in like the super small towns and uncles and aunts who like don't anymore. They kind of live in the bigger cities and they always comment on like, it's like the ones who live in the really small town are always updating the other family members on like, oh yeah, I went to so-and-so's visitation. They were the uncle of this and that person. And it doesn't seem to me like, yeah, the smaller the community, the more, I don't know, maybe you deal with the death of every person around or near you. And sometimes the wakes are jovial. I think that, yeah, just showing up and paying your respects. And I've stood in the line for both grandparents, and it's just like, yeah, gosh, the people who drive an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours to take time out of their day to like, I don't know, love or honor you and the loss in your family like means a lot. And you don't realize that until you're kind of on the receiving end. But it seems like it's something that is, I don't know, is dying itself. Like you only maybe go to wakes if it was your family or someone you really, really knew. Whereas like the older tradition was that you kind of always dealt with death if it was anybody in your wider community who died, and we're further away from that in kind of the society we live in then.
Can I share? Well, this might be, I don't know if this isn't a stretch to say it's one of, if not the biggest regret of my life. I don't know if I've shared this with you guys, and I've shared it with the podcast. So this is up there. Maybe not the biggest, but this was something I definitely regret. It was a friend of mine whose dad passed away. And I had kind of lost touch with him. I was really good friends with him when we were little. Just throughout time, kind of just were distant, but still close enough that I just different things came up. I was planning on going and just whatever, catastrophic traffic scenario. And like, I wasn't going to make it in time, but I had something else later that evening, whatever, just didn't go. And just hearing, and I talked to my mom about it the next day, and just like hearing her description of the family and everything. And it was the type of thing that like really, really hit me, that like, dang, that was like a really big mistake, that I didn't go. And just having experienced like several things like you just mentioned, Landon, just seeing family members and just, people kind of doing that for different people. I'm like, wow, like that was a really good opportunity that I just blew, to be a good friend to this guy,
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that's just kind of talking about that scenario. I think that's it's the type of thing that like I learned my lesson, like when in doubt, go, like, even if it is like way out of the way, even if it is like, forces you to completely change your plans, and in terms of like immediate encounters with death, like I did actually get to see my grandma die, like in her like very last breath, which was like, an unforgettable experience. And she wanted to die at home. That was like her thing. She had cancer. And basically it got to a point where she knew she wasn't going to beat it and she didn't want to treat it anymore. And that was how it happened. We, had spent a couple days in a row actually at their house because we figured it would happen one of those days. And it was very fortunate that like we were all about to leave for the evening. So we all kind of gathered in there. My family isn't particularly faithful, but we might have said a prayer together in that scenario. And we just kind of were chit-chatting, just a little banter about, and I don't know, one of them asked a question to my grandma, and like mostly she was unresponsive, kind of like Ross, you mentioned, it's this really drawn out process. But she kind of gave some sort of nod, which whether it was voluntary or not, I mean, I suppose, who knows, but they all kind of took it as voluntary just based on the question. And then at that point, like, it was just very obvious to all of us that like, oh yeah, like she's not breathing. That was kind of her last little movement or whatever.
And when was that?
So what's that?
When was that?
Gosh, I was a junior in college, so that would have been 2011. Yeah, 2011. But yeah, so I actually did get to see someone die, which was, won't forget that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of similar, and obviously, I was hesitant to share this at first, but I feel like, everybody's being respectful enough. But I remember my grandma, so she passed away of COVID in November of 2020, which is when we in like Central Illinois had our surge and our hospital filled up and all that. No, November 2021. Oh gosh, year, but whatever. Yeah. And wait, we just did that. I'm sorry. It was 2020. Sorry, I'm all sorry.
It was 2020.
2020.
Yeah.
I started second guessing myself, but so at the time they were not allowing visitors at the hospital. Like at the very end, they let my dad and my aunt in to spend some time with her, but that's it. So me and another, I worked at the hospital, and I actually have another cousin that did as well. So we were kind of able to maybe slightly bend the rules a little bit, but get in there and spend a little bit of time with her, which I think was important. Because I just think, just going through that alone would be brutal. But anyway, I remember I say this like as respectfully as possible, but I remember the last time I saw her, like she looked different, and I remember thinking like, she's about to pass away. And it wasn't like the moment she passed, but I just remember there was like a weird, I don't know, just I don't know, the look, a feeling, what it would be, but I just remember thinking that like, wow, that's like, it's about to happen. And I don't know, it's just a weird experience, I guess. That's the only person I've ever been around that was, right at almost at the time of their actual passing.
So I think an interesting thought that I think is a nice way to sort of tie up these thoughts. I googled corporal works of mercy. This is a good confirmation trivia question for you guys. List the corporal works of mercy. This is like the number pi. Every person should know number pi. Every Christian should know the corporal works of mercy. Okay.
I mean, feed the hungry,
Bury the
clothe the
dead.
naked, visit the sick, bury the dead.
Apparently, Matt cares nothing for the imprisoned and thinks that people can just drink their own spit. So,
Yeah,
What's the
thirsty
last
people
one
don't
mean?
care,
What's the
but
last
just
one
the
mean?
hungry ones.
well, the last one I said was give water to the thirsty.
Give water. Okay.
Anyway, the point there though is that bury the dead one. So when I was teaching theology, there I shared both years with the students an article actually from NPR called "Always Go to the Wake." It's a good riff on what you were saying, Matt, with your story. And it's like the wake or visitation is basically the rest of the world's opportunity to bury the dead, right? I mean, practically speaking, obviously the people who work in the cemetery bury the dead. But which, it's fine. That's how I mean, I don't know how to bury caskets. I don't know how deep they go, make sure things are level. But going to the visitation, yeah, it's bury the dead. It's almost sort of like I think a metaphor for expose yourself to death insofar as much as possible. Um
Yeah.
it's a way to sort of almost like, the other corporal works of mercy, like that's obviously tending to the bodily needs of every other aspect of one's life, right? Giving them water, giving them food. If you mess up, still visiting them in prison. But burying the dead is like that very last thing. You don't like they don't die and they're like, oh, okay, just leave their body somewhere. No, burying the dead is like that final sort of mark of respect, that sort of final affirmation of dignity. And going to the wake, is the opportunity for most of the time to do that.
Um, I totally agree with everything you just said. And even like one step further, I remember this couple of years ago, I saw some post and honestly, I didn't fact check it, but it pretty much said like around the time of Halloween, so this All Hallows Eve, there's this tradition in Poland where people will go to the cemeteries to pray for the dead. Um, and there's this like beautiful picture. So like instead of dressing up like ghosts and goblins and ghouls, like we maybe have a more appropriate view of death, and they took candles and went to the cemetery and prayed. And I don't know, I was like, wow, it's a much more beautiful acceptance of acknowledgement of death than dressing up like a goblin and a vampire. But so not we started, but like that's something I really want to like instill in my kids. So like every year around Halloween, I want to like go to cemeteries of people like of our grandparents and things like that. Um, and I know like my mom tries hard to like go to the cemeteries of her parents and grandparents and like just like clean up the gravesite because like it gets dirty and right, not that you like have to do that, but like that's just like a way she tries to just show those they've passed away, but like their lives mattered. So she's gonna go and make sure that things are in order, I guess, at the places where they're buried.
Yeah, that's interesting. That comment on what you said Polish people do on
According to
Halloween.
the Facebook post, yes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm not personally against anything with dressing up like ghosts, and which that's not what you're saying, but it's almost like dressing up as ghosts or goblins, whatever. It's like okay, fine, but there is still something that's off about it. It's almost in a sense of like um mocking death. And
Yeah.
with what you're describing, Ross, with going to the cemetery, it's going to the cemetery in sort of a more intentional way outside of the funeral, which is good. It's because even some people certainly don't do that. But going to the cemetery just because I think a lot of fathers or mothers, for that matter, would be reticent to take their children to a cemetery to visit a relative's grave, just because it's so awkward and uncomfortable. It's like, oh, what do you say? What if they're going to get upset or suddenly have a fear of death? And I don't know, maybe I'm being too audacious because I don't have the responsibility of children, but I mean, I would think that, well, yeah, I mean, those things, of course, could happen, but that's just a necessary, important thing to still expose your child to with certain amounts. Yeah, a child that wasn't comfortable handling funerals or visitations, I would have a very low tolerance of, because I would just think that much of what that much of exposed them to that. Maybe I'm too melancholic. Death is coming, kid.
If you have you guys so you've gone to the cemetery after the funeral, did you guys ever have often they kind of say a little bit of a sermon, ashes to ashes, and then everybody leaves? Have you ever stuck around and watched the casket lowered and all that stuff, or no?
Nope.
No.
Mm-mm.
But there's never been an opportunity to, as far as I'm aware.
I don't know if I've been at the graveside a lot. My grandma in the early 90s, part of even the ashes to ashes was they were there cranking the casket to the bottom while everyone was still there. But my dad's side of the family, it was always, this is my great uncle. He always, even if it was someone at the church, he just stuck around with the, guy at the cemetery and helped him get it in the ground, get it all unhooked, and then start shoveling the dirt back on. And so when this great uncle died, we always knew that it was his tradition. He was kind of effectively our grandpa. And so everybody leaves, the family goes back to the church to eat, and we stuck around with his 50-year-old son, 60-year-old son. And lowered it and helped the guy load everything back in the truck, and it was just dirt, and that was the last part of it. So I've seen it done a couple of times, and it is there's an eerie sense to it, this is the last step.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Here's a good trivia question to lighten the mood. When was the last time anyone saw Abraham Lincoln?
Somebody dug up the bones to make sure they're I forget, it might have been someone famous too, or at least someone in history that was this guy. Maybe it was a myth.
I don't know. It's the 1950s or 60s. I forget exactly.
Yeah.
But I should probably write in to have my body exhumed to make sure my body wasn't stolen, just because I know there's going to be so many people fighting over it. I know Matt's going to want it. Ross is going to want it. It's just going to be straws. You guys are going to pick straws.
Well, you're going to donate it to science, right? Here lies the...
Yeah.
Who can chug X amount of liters of beer and run a mile? That needs to be studied.
And there's a handful of others, but we didn't even get to your second excerpt, Ross. Should we think of a question to bring it home?
Oh, kind of a question. It's funny. I was going to lighten the mood by how Jimmy Valvano handled the teleprompter for our fans that don't listen to the real speech.
Oh, okay.
But
I can keep going. I love podcasting. I breathe podcasting. I'm podcasting another show right now. I'm actually doing.
so I love the part in the speech
I'm getting the content to fit together perfectly.
when, I mean, you guys know the part when, I don't want to misquote it, but I'll paraphrase the best I can, I guess. But apparently, like, the teleprompter thing was flashing. He was supposed to be finishing the speech. So he had like 30 seconds to get done. And what did he say? I'm almost there. Here we go. He goes, that screen is flashing up there 30 seconds. Like, I care about that screen right now, huh? I got tumors all over my body. I'm worried about some guy in the back going 30 seconds. You got a lot of, hey, Vava Napoli, buddy. You got a lot. Which Mike looked up. It means go to hell, I think.
Go to Naples.
I just thought that was like, what a nice, just natural comedic relief to his speech right there. It was just great.
So Arthur Ashe is referenced in that second excerpt. Whether or not we go into it, this is a fun little aside. So, for those who do not know, Arthur Ashe was the first professional African American tennis player who passed away of AIDS. First African American professional tennis player. Well, I guess technically also the first one who died of AIDS. But anyway, when I was playing tennis growing up for my parents, whenever I would start losing, I would start praying to Arthur Ashe to myself for
What?
Why?
Why? Because I wanted to win, and I thought if I invoked his aid, I mean, mind you, I was only like 9 or 10 years old when I would do this. I was just.
How do you know who he was?
I think it was because we had the full collection of Funkin' Wagnall's encyclopedia, and I would read this, and Arthur Ashe was an A. So I think I put a lot of the A's.
The most famous athlete to have an AA name.
I'll go one more thing here, and if we can, you can take it out, Mike, if you want. But I really liked, it's a line that I didn't remember from the speech, honestly, because I've heard the speech multiple times before, but re-listening to it to kind of prep when I first started prepping for tonight's episode, something that really stuck out to me that I didn't remember before. Maybe I had heard it, like maybe it hit me before and I just forgot. But he says, I'm trying to find it in the speech to give it like its full credit. But he pretty much says, I can't find it, that he wouldn't do like he's not changing anything. I apologize. Yeah, there he goes. I can't help it. Now I'm fighting cancer. Everybody knows that. People ask me all the time about how you go through your life and how's your day, and nothing has changed for me. That's when he kind of goes into, he's still very emotional and he's the son of Rocco and Angeli, all that stuff. But it just hit me like, I think it's fair and good to reflect on, like, if you were at your funeral, if you were about to pass away, like, what would you change in your life? Because those might be things that you need to act upon right now, to live a better, more full life. But I also remember hearing something, I don't remember where I heard it, but kind of similar to what Jimmy V just said, was like, trying to kind of hit home the point that, like, just life matters. Ordinary life is important. You don't have to do some huge romantic thing. Somebody gave the excerpt, like, if an asteroid was coming down to the Earth right now and I was doing the dishes and I found out, like, you've only got an hour left, like, what would you do? And the person responded, like, something effective, like, well, I'd keep doing the dishes because that was the right thing to do. Which probably not literally, because dishes don't need to be clean if everything's gone in an hour. But just this kind of idea that, like, life matters, like the little ordinary things do matter. So, like, just doing those things really well is, I don't know, like living life. You know what I mean? It doesn't, sometimes life is those small things, and that's a really beautiful thing. So I don't know, just this kind of idea when he said, like, when Jimmy Valvano said, nothing's changed. I don't know, that just kind of struck me as, yeah, like, it doesn't have to be, I mean, yeah, maybe you want to do something before you pass away if you know you have terminal cancer. Like, I want to visit this place, maybe. But, like, it doesn't have to be that. It can also be, yeah, I'm still gonna take care of my kids and, talk to my wife and, like, get frustrated by certain things. Like, it doesn't have to change because it's like life is good, So I don't know, that just kind of struck me.
Feel like that might be fuel for an entire other podcast. Because, yeah. I don't know. That's a deep. Well, I don't know. We got 4 on the subject of death, not to like intentionally.
That's true. Yeah, we don't have to throw all of our analogies and anecdotes and top lessons. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. That's just a good question and a good concept to like tinker with. And yeah, I'm sure it'll come up in another speech.
We could every episode for this quad, we finish. Yeah, okay. If you knew you're gonna die next week, what are you gonna do different? And then we challenge each other, and we do that thing. And 3 weeks later, we ask it again, and we just keep going, see who's gonna go further. I'm gonna steal one of your 3 wives,
and by the end of it, Mike will be married.
The question to end before Mike does something he regrets. The question to end is, what are you going to do different this week now that we've thought about death so much? What are you going to do different this week? Not in 10 years from now, not how fast is your marathon going to be in 3 years, like what are you going to do different this week?
Because of this podcast episode?
It better be laugh, cry, or think, or you're wrong.
I was gonna say there's 3 answers here. Pick one. Or watch the Green Bay Packers.
Boo.
Are they in the playoffs?
They are in the playoffs.
Yeah. So you could do that. That's the cop out.
Well, I already cried this afternoon preparing for the speech, thinking about my wife and my son. So I don't know. Maybe I'll do that again tomorrow. Maybe I'll just do the dishes too.
All right. I guess I'll try to laugh more because I only have 3 answers and I don't want to think. So
I think I've laughed plenty tonight. I'll do some contemplative thinking that may lead to a good cry. Well, shed a tear.
Since I've been sick with COVID, I've watched a lot of movies, so I might say, I'm going to look for a movie that will make me cry.
should we? So everybody knows we have 2 of our 4 podcasters have COVID right now. So, like, should we tell the listeners about how great of a pump-up speech we had to give to get you guys ready to go tonight? Or is that just for the Diamond members?
Oh, man, there's such a... Oh, what was the can? I'm going to watch the
for
Green
Mike,
Bay
nothing's
Packers.
just changed. So he's just going to keep doing the dishes. He already lives life so
Mike already
fully.
lives
He's laugh,
life.
cried,
He
and-
already laughs, thinks, and cries.
All right. I think that'll probably do us for tonight, right, guys? So Jamie Valvano, 1993 ESPYs.
Hey, hold on. I know what episode is coming up, so I'm going to let the audience know that I am hosting our next episode coming up in 3 weeks. That episode that speech will be given by Ida B. Wells, 1909, entitled This Awful Slaughter. That's heavy, but we'll go from there. So it's been great chatting, folks.
Lead us to a better place. Road will lead us to a better place.